Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to another episode of The Ways We Move, the podcast that talks about innovative mobility solutions and the people behind them. My name is Nicolas Zart, and I am your host again on this podcast. And we are in our second season, and I can't say it enough how happy I am that this has been so successful. We're still doing it to this day. And I wanted to introduce our next speaker, our next guest on our podcast, because I've been wanting to have her for a long time on this podcast. She is definitely in the segment of women in mobility. She's a mover and a shaker. She doesn't know it yet, but she certainly is. And her name is Anna Golendukhina. I met Anna, what was it, about 4 or 5 months ago when I was chairing the eVTOL Show USA session in Palo Alto in California. And I was impressed by this young lady. She went on stage and you could see that she had a little bit of apprehension, even a little bit of nervousness. But when I listened to her, I was mesmerized. The depth of information that she had. She's a researcher and she's been working with Embry-Riddle, and she now works with flight safety. And so she is doing a lot of research on pilots going into what we call advanced air mobility, AAM for short. And what does that mean? So just to give you a bit of a background approach to all of this, you roughly have two different types of pilots out there, right? You have the vertical takeoff and landing pilots. They're helicopter pilots. That means they don't have wings. They hover all the time, even when they're going forward. So it's a special skill set that you have, much like a drummer can do four things with their two arms and two legs. Well, that's what helicopter pilots do. And there's no relaxing. There's no going to the bathroom when you're on a helicopter, when you're flying a helicopter, right? Not to say that our friends in the fixed wing world have it easier or better. It's a different skill set. So what do each of these types of pilots, those who hover only, those who glide on the air with wings, what are the challenges for these guys going forward into eVTOL flying, into AAM? Is it easy? Do they need more training? Well, those are the questions that Anna is going to answer for you today. So if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, please do so. And if also give us a like, give us your comments. What do you think about the training that needs to happen for these flying cars, air taxi pilots? Because it's going to be much more automated than it is for normal flying procedures, or at least what we have up until now. Also, another thing too is this episode will go live first on our Patreon website, so please do check it out. We have something called, well, the Ways We Move Plus for Patreon sponsors, those who help us support and make these shows a reality today, because we want to continue giving you good quality content going forward. So we really appreciate your support on Patreon. Stay tuned for Anna. And thank you all. Like, subscribe, please share, and go and see us on Patreon and give us a little coffee. Would you please? Thank you. Well, Anna, welcome to The Ways We Move, the podcast that highlights innovative mobility solutions. And please tell us a little bit about you.
Good morning. My name is Anna Golendukhina. I am an aviation professional. I've worked in commercial airlines operations for the past decade. I currently work for Flight Safety International. It's one of the largest learning centers for pilots and cabin crews in the United States and internationally. I oversee flight instructor qualifications across various multiple programs. I'm also a researcher. I'm part of the search lab of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Is there where I obtained my master's degree in aeronautical science. Search lab stands for Cognitive Engineering Research in Transportational Systems Lab. The director of this lab is Dr. Andrew Daddle. I like to call him my mentor and my academic father. So our research at Search Lab focuses on human factors in aviation. We have already completed a few FAA-funded research studies. One of the projects that we already published and shared the results with FAA was dedicated to stress management levels of air traffic control students. Was quite an interesting study, and we hope that the results of this study will be useful for FAA and for training curriculums of air traffic control students in the future. I'm also a huge fan of advanced air mobility, and for that reason, I've chosen this to be the topic of my graduate work at Embry-Riddle. I've explored eVTOL user acceptance, and I'm so excited to share the study of these results with our audience today and to discuss it with you, Nick. Thank you so much for inviting me over.
Oh, Anna, it's such a pleasure to have you here because you're part of a very special segment that we have had for over a year now, and it is Women in Mobility. And it's just amazing. I always have such a great time talking to you guys. And I have to say, I first saw you, what was it, back in November, and it was in Palo Alto in California at the eVTOL show where I was, emceeing the whole event. And I was really blown away by your depth of expertise and your depth of research into our beloved advanced air mobility industry. And so that's why I wanted to pick your brain. I wanted to invite you, and it finally works. We're finally talking about it. So tell me a little bit about what drew you to this advanced air mobility industry, because you have the perfect background. I was looking at your background. I'm like, wow, you've been working with Embry-Riddle. Now you're working with one of the best top companies in aerospace. What is the draw with advanced air mobility from your angle?
Okay, that's a very good question. And we like to say that every research starts with the inspiration. So, you know,
That's well said. That's well said. A good researcher is neutral and is, well, this is really interesting.
and really innovation, every innovation starts with the inspiration. So, it all started with one of those moments that completely shifts your perspective. I was at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and we had this incredible keynote speaker coming in. Maybe you already know Captain Billy Nolan. He had exciting career, and he still has an exciting career in aviation. Former FAA administrator, currently chief safety officer of Archer.
That's right.
But when he took the stage and he started presenting Archer eVTOL aircraft, I was absolutely mesmerized. The aircraft design was just so unique,
Yeah.
something that I've never seen before. The aerodynamics was just so different, completely
Mhm.
unique. So I remember I was just sitting there thinking, I want to fly this plane. And so naturally, as every aviation geek, I came home and I directly dove into Google. I was searching for everything: FAA certification, requirements for eVTOL pilots, training programs, hiring requirements. And here where it gets very interesting, because I found absolutely nothing at that time that we're talking 2.5 years ago. So I went deeper. I studied, yeah,
You're right.
around
I,
2.5 years ago, FAA didn't release any updates
no.
on aviation regulations. There was no Innovate 28 program, so that was quite interesting. I'd say so. I went deeper. I started my research on databases, academic journals, looking for studies on pilots transition into this new aerodynamics regimes. So still nothing, and no empirical data at that time. Again, now
Yep.
it became a hotspot for academic research. So that's where the light bulb just went off, and I realized that there was the massive research gap and in our understanding. So we're on the edge of this revolutionary technology, but no one asks these fundamental questions. What about pilots? So
Yep.
at that time, I approached my research instructor for graduate capstone project, Dr. Jennifer Thrope, and luckily I got a positive acknowledgement from her that we can actually design a research over questions with who's going to fly this aircraft. Will those pilots come from traditional conventional backgrounds? Can we transfer their traditional aeronautical skills to eVTOLs? And what about automation preferences? Would pilots prefer more autonomy, similar level of autonomy, or they don't like this shift in autonomy? So do they feel confident in operating this novel technology? And I designed this comprehensive study. And for my research, luckily enough, I tapped into the rich pilot community of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical
Yes.
University.
Yes,
My
that's true.
participants were primarily students, faculty, staff members who had a private pilot license, a commercial pilot license, or certified flight instructors. And we had a diverse pilot demographics of different experience levels, from low time pilots to those with
Yeah.
thousands of hours. And the response was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I would have known you back then, because I would have said, well, Anna, obviously you need to start with the two best places possible. One of them is, well, my own website, electricairmobility.news.
Right,
But you're right. It was 2.5 years ago that I started it. But before that, I was writing for Vertiflight, Vertical Flight
right,
Societies, magazine. But, the one place where you have to go automatically, and this is where I start all of my articles, is evtol.news/aircraft. And that's where you get all of the programs that, I was very lucky to have found it way back in 2015 when I started getting involved with VFS. And that is, that was amazing, because when I first looked at it, I think there were only 35 projects. And I
wow,
introduced a few before 50, and I introduced a few more before 100, and now it's thousands of projects, obviously. So
exactly.
yeah, but you're right. There was not all that much on pilot information, and in fact, I think the first time I kind of got close to pilot was when I flew the simulators of Pivotal, of Joby, of 3D Harris. I mean, a few of these
Right.
simulators, and then it dawned on me. I was like, okay, now I understand what the difference. And I have just a very quick joke here. The first time I flew, the first simulator I flew, no, the second simulator I flew was Joby's. So I take off, helicopter style, right? So I have my collector, I'm just flying, and then all of a sudden it's such a beautiful. Oh no, it was Beta. Sorry, it was
Okay, yeah,
Betas, and then of
that's
course, and beautiful. Those wings are so amazing. It flies just like an airplane, and I'm like, all right, well, let's go back to the spot where vertipad, and I'm still in wing mode, right? So I'm like, whoo, whoa, overshot that one. Came back again, whoo, overshot it again. Oh, that's right. Transfer back to VTOL mode, which is really interesting,
it's
right? Because
unique.
we're used to rudder control, there's no rudder control. And so I thought this is really interesting. And then I started talking to all my friends who were either helicopter or airplane pilots, and those who were both. And it was really interesting to hear their point of view, which is exactly where you come in. So I can't wait to hear about, what did you find out? What was that? Because, yeah, 2.5 years ago, we were starting to look into all of that good stuff. So what did you find out?
Okay. So I had few dependable variables that I deeply looked into. The first transition to autonomous systems, and
Yeah.
that's such an important question. That's such an important transition for all the pilots, because traditionally pilots do use automation to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Um, there's auto throttle, FATIC that manages engine parameters, or autopilot that manages completely the flight path. But those are most definitely incredible tools. But here's the key: the human is still pretty much in command,
Oh,
and
yes.
the pilot is the decision maker.
Oh, yes.
And in that relationships, the automation is the assistant. And in this partnership, human has the final say. So now flip the
Yep.
script to eVTOL operations. Many of these aircraft are being designed to make autonomous decisions during routine missions. And we're
Yep.
not just talking about automation that helps. We're talking about systems that independently manage entire flight operations. And this technology is so advanced that it does reduce fundamentally the
Yes.
pilot involvement in a ways we've never seen before. And on that surface, it does sound amazing, right?
Well, yes. Well, there's a lot of thinking that needs to
Yeah,
go into that, obviously, right?
but it gets complicated. So what happens when things don't go according to the plan, when some deviations occur? Suddenly a pilot needs to step in. They need to entirely troubleshoot, entirely take over and reprogram it. Those systems are so complex, and
Yes.
potentially it's not is a complete different beast. And in modern aviation, we've seen some tragic consequences when pilots
Yeah,
became
absolutely.
too removed from the active flying loop.
Yes.
Their ability to intervene effectively during critical
Yes.
moments can be compromised. So with eVTOLs, we're facing this fascinating paradox. The technology is more capable than ever, but that very capability creates new challenges for the humans who needs to oversee it. And it's not just about flying anymore. It's about being systems manager, troubleshooter when it's necessary, and a pilot needs to seamlessly transition from monitoring to hands-on control. So that's fundamentally that's a fundamental shift in navigating these dilemmas.
Yeah, you're right. The autonomous pathway of aircraft has been fascinating all the way back to the 1970s with Lockheed's amazing. By the way, I flew on those Lockheed's LT-1011s and even 707s and all that. But that was the first aircraft where you could actually land in the middle of fog, right? And that was amazing. But it's not autonomous; it's automated, highly automated.
Right.
And then you go all the way forward to now 777s, A380s, all the biggest airplanes, even regular smaller airplanes, and you can see the level of automated system. It's not yet autonomous, and it's truly fantastic. But you're right. I think one of the things, and we're not going to go into details about that. One of the articles that we all wanted to write about is what does the industry have to learn from the horrendous 737 Max
Yep.
TCAS problems that were not highlighted. Training was not well done. Actually, was withheld, which is really the biggest problem here. And
Unfortunately.
what can we learn from that? And I think many of us shied away from approaching that. And perhaps we should have done a much better job at that. So it's interesting to see that. My take on what I saw so far on these simulators is, you have a box, basically a corridor box where you are in there and you can try to go as much as you want and go hit a building or a pole. You won't be able to do that. But there are other questions, and like you rightfully said, what about like sun flares, EMF disturbances? What about, and you can even add to this, terroristic acts against our GPS spoofing systems. I mean, there's a lot of things that come into consideration. So this is where it's interesting to hear, how you guys are developing this to the next frontier. Because now, I have a friend who flies Gulfstream 650 ERs, and he says he hates it. And I was like, why would you hate flying that beautiful airplane? He goes, well, because I don't fly it. My insurance prohibits me from hand flying the airplane. I was like, what? He goes, I just program. I push buttons, which is where we're going, right? Watchdogs at the flight deck. So I can understand the dilemma here, and I can understand also the reticence for some of these pilots to go, why would I want to fly an automated aircraft when I'd like to fly? Well, it's like a car, right? I mean, you drive a modern car, you don't really drive it anymore, but I still have an old car with stick shift, and that's fun. Different things. So
Right.
it's interesting to see how you guys are going about that.
And I think this study can also be expanded to exploring the levels of situational awareness of pilots, because what happens when we fully trust the capability and then our levels of situational awareness could kind of decrease. We start being complacent to the clues to read,
Oh,
and
yes.
you just rely on the technology so much that it kind of um, put into the sleep your sense of alertness. But that's a whole another study. But it was just interesting to look into this from different angles.
That's something that we see on the road today with a lot of cars. You're so removed from the driving experience that people eat, put makeup on, pick their noses, and do all. And it's like you have 4,000 pound vehicle that is potentially very lethal here. Wake up! Or people falling asleep on cars that are level 2, level 3 autonomous. Oh, come on, guys. You can't do that. And shame on you, companies who don't do a better job at telling people be careful. But then again, that's an old can of worms that, the driver license requirements definitely need to be beefed up in our country. That's a whole new can of worms we're not going to approach. That's for somebody else to figure out. So, anyway,
Whoever
yeah.
is
So,
somebody is listening to our podcast driving, drive safe.
drive safely, please. And those of you, the make those decisions up there, please, please, please get back to common sense. It's not that common anymore, but it needs to be common. Anyway, sorry. So go on. We were talking about pilots' flying skills and how do they adapt with all of this now? I mean, do they adapt at all? Are they needed at all anymore?
That's another good question. So I particularly explored the transferability of their skills from conventional training to eVTOL maneuvers, and I explored their levels of transferability, whether they feel confident performing those advanced eVTOL maneuvers or not. And what I found is that the most participants reported moderate skills transferability. And I love these results because pilots aren't just saying, oh, yeah, I can just jump right into eVTOLs, no problem at all. But they're also not saying that everything I know is useless. So they're really
Hmm.
telling us my foundational piloting skills are the fundamentals I've built over the years of training on flying, and I recognize that eVTOLs are different animal and I'm going to need to learn new operational techniques. Now, here what makes it even more compelling. When I run statistical analysis, specifically ANOVA test, I found that there were no significant differences on how pilots perceive the skills transferability across different certification levels. So what that really means is that, for example, private pilots who just started their journey, or commercial pilots with hundreds of hours, or certified flight instructors who already teach others to fly, everyone viewed this potential skill transferability similarly. And think about it, what that means. You've got
Yeah.
pilots on very different stages of their careers with vastly different experience levels, and they're all arriving at the same conclusion independently. That's not just coincidence.
Wow.
A shared understanding across the entire pilot community. And that understanding is that transitioning to eVTOL operations is absolutely achievable, but is not going to happen by magic. It's going to require targeted training, adaptation to technologies, and willingness to expand on what they already know. So to me, it actually really encouraging. It shows that pilots community isn't just overconfident, but they're also not intimidated. So realistically, they're ready to learn, but they understand that it's going to take some time. And if we talk about advanced eVTOL maneuvers,
Hmm.
this is where the results get actually sobering and really important. So I just quickly share about that.
Sure.
5% of the participant responded, less than 5% of the participant responded that they feel very confident to operate, to uh, to perform advanced eVTOL maneuvers
Wow.
such as precision
Interesting.
landing,
That's really good.
mid-air hoping, vertical land takeoff, all the advanced eVTOL maneuvers. And across the board, all pilots, there was no difference in their perception. There was a uniform sense of uncertainty of how they perceived the confidence in implementing those maneuvers. So, for example, let me paint the picture for you. Imagine you are, I think you mentioned something earlier. You are operating within the corridor. You're flying in extremely close proximity to another aircraft in congested airspace, and then you need to execute a precision landing in dense urban environment, maybe on a building or on a vertiport, surrounded by
In
other.
between buildings, in between things, trees. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a completely unfamiliar territory for those fixed wing pilots coming from traditional aviation backgrounds. So, and again, that tells us something crucial, that we need to prepare pilots for eVTOL specific operations. And you can't just assume that someone at an excellent level of flying skills can just transition to eVTOL operations having the same confidence. There's a training gap. I think what good news is that we identified where's the gap, and now we can fill it. So it's going to require deliberate and thoughtful approach, and but we can make it happen.
It's amazing what you're saying, because it's also a testament to the caliber of these pilots, and that's something that I always tell almost every pilot or every airplane I get into. I always try to talk to the captain or the first officer, and I always say, you guys I would vote for without thinking twice. Other people, I'm not really as sure, because I know you're trained to handle emergencies. You're trained to be pragmatic. You have method, and I'm very intrigued with what you said, because I thought, originally I thought these guys would have been more, oh yeah, I mean, it's easier than flying a 777. It's easier than flying an Airbus 320. I mean, it would almost like sound like it would be a step down. But you highlighted a good point, that they are realistic. They know how long it takes to understand something, to master, and to become, second nature. And another thing you just said that was interesting is, you're right. helicopter pilots understand VTOL operations, but they might not understand as well fixed wing operations, and then of course vice versa for the other one. So there is that point where both of them have to come together. And so lucky, I was wondering also if in your studies you found that those who are certified in both rotary wing and fixed wings, is that better for them to jump into eVTOL operations? Does that make it easier, or maybe is it a hindrance?
That's a good question, and I think it's important to say now for those listeners who are rotorcraft pilots and they're listening to us now, they think I don't share these views, and that might be right because in my study, that just happened to be that my accessible population, my study sample, I only had fixed wing pilots, so that's I think it's important to share. So
Good to know. Yeah.
I can't really predict whether if I would have a lot of rotorcraft pilots as part of my study participants, they would answer differently, but I also cannot say that they would not share the sense of uncertainty. So that would be interesting if someone will expand on my study and actually survey rotorcraft pilots and see what they have to say, because maybe those skills that we require for eVTOL operations will be somehow interrelated to something that rotorcraft pilots has already learned in their training.
So that's actually great. This is a challenge that we're giving you guys out there, listeners and watchers of the Ways We Move. If you are certified for helicopter operations, you are a VTOL certified pilot. Let us know, what do you think about eVTOLs? What do you think about advanced air mobility, specifically when it comes down to training? And we'll make sure that you can get in touch with Anna and continue the incredible work that these guys are doing over there. Yeah, I would love to know too, because I think it's really important. It really looks, I mean, that was the one thing that really I came across after having tried all of these simulators. Yeah, it takes, VTOL operations, and it takes fixed wing operations, and you don't even have a rudder. So, I mean, it's a certain acquired taste, right? We're not talking about red wine and white wine. We're talking about rosé here. It's a very different
That's
thing. It has
right.
a little bit of, it has a little bit of both, right? So anyway, but
Some of
that's,
the maneuvers could be the same, but
yes.
I think it's important not to forget that they still have to learn how to interact with automation, because even coming from a rotorcraft background, I don't think they were exposed to such level of autonomy previously. So that would be interesting to study in the future, most
Yeah,
definitely.
and there's also the other points that we keep on talking about. I think a lot of pilots are coming to the retirement age or just want to step down for XYZ reasons. And we always think that, well, you know what, you can do this now. This is, you've flown fixed wings or helicopters or both, but now, hey, you've got this third thing in there that you can try to. I always thought that this would be such a great thing to do after a very stressful environment where you're flying either a big helicopter or a big airplane. Now you get to fly these really pretty cool thinking, if you think about it, these really cool eVTOLs, right? Do you think these guys would find this appealing, or do you know anything about that part?
Another interesting question. So the results of my study showed that the willingness to operate eVTOL is not predicted by the certification level flight hours logged. And that means that there's a different factor that influences pilots' preferences for operating eVTOLs. But that wouldn't be an age or flight experience. So
Mm.
we can't really say whether pilots who have already distinguished career in aviation, who has received multiple aircraft types, and they would just think, oh, that's another one, I can easily get that. So
That's a good point. Yeah.
we will have to see. But what I can say based on my study, the willingness to operate this technology is not predicted by factors as age, flight experience, or other demographics such as female or male. So
Right.
that that would be something that we will have to find out. So I can only assume that it could be the shared sense of unfamiliarity with this aircraft. And I think as we will get to pilots to get a broader exposure with this technology and improve the level of safety in operational environment, I think that would probably create more interest of pilots to get to learn this animal and enjoy flying glass cockpits and low altitude to VFR from one point to another in UAM corridor. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, it's something that I always wondered because, I mean, basically what we're telling these pilots is, hey, for the next foreseeable, let's say, decade or so, we will need pilots inside of these eVTOLs, even eSTOLs and ECTOLs, in fact, and in fact, almost anything practically, because we're all going towards at some point autonomy. But we're also basically not telling them that at one point you will not be on that aircraft, you will be on the ground flying that aircraft. That's one transition. And at some other point or another, hopefully in about 30 years or so, it will be fully autonomous. And this is, by the way, another talk I had with a lot of AI experts when we were asking them, when do you think we can achieve fully autonomous level and even autonomous level for vertiports and multiports? And they were saying, honestly, not before 2075. Now, whether that happens or not is very hard to predict, obviously. But we are also telling these guys that at one point you'll have to step down, and at one point you'll have to just not do anything at all, right? And you might just have to press a button whenever it's
That could
needed.
also
So,
happen for sure.
and I was thinking of something too. Like I'm at that generation where I grew up in an analog world, and I'm equally as comfortable because I went through the introduction of the digital world. So if I am in an old car where I need to drive with a stick shift and a clutch, I know how to do it. If I'm in
Yeah.
an EV that's almost autonomous, I know how to drive it. I have no problem. But I think maybe also what might be interesting is when that transition happens from a piloted electric aircraft to a remotely piloted
Hmm.
aircraft, it might appeal more to the millennial generation that has always born with digital equipments around them. So I was wondering if you saw anything like that yet. And again, this might be way too early to talk about that, but that was my I guess the way that I kind of thought at it. The older guys will go, nah, I have a Cessna, I fly it for fun, or a Mooney or whatever. Remote flying, not really my thing, unless they're into drones too, by the way, I guess. I never thought about that part. I don't know. I threw a lot of things in there, but I think you understand where we're going with that
Yeah,
one.
absolutely. I had some results that were particularly surprising in my research study. So when I examined pilots' attitude towards automation systems, I honestly expected more reluctance. That's not what I found at all. So the responses overall revealed the openness to automation features, and that
Nice.
generally surprised me. Nearly 46% of the participants preferred maintaining current levels of autonomy, and they're comfortable with the way things are headed. And around 30% actually favored slightly higher levels of automation. And another
Wow.
almost 17% they supported substantial increases in automation. So when you add those
Hmm.
numbers up, we're talking about the majority of pilots being either comfortable with actively and being actively enthusiastic about automation playing a larger role in eVTOL operations, and only 7.8% of the participants show the preference for lower levels of automation. But here where it gets really interesting, and this part that made me sit up and take a note, when I ran the statistical analysis, the Kruskal-Wallis test, it showed that certified flight instructors have a larger preference for automation than all the other pilots. I'm talking about private pilots and commercial pilots, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it makes total sense because CFIs, they're constantly juggling between
Yeah.
multiple tasks, and they're monitoring the aircraft, and they're monitoring the student, and they're teaching, correcting, watching for the traffic, managing emergencies. And that automation can potentially significantly reduce their cognitive load
Of course.
and overall improve the safety margins. So for them, automation isn't just about giving up the control, it's more about having a safety net and them to have their focus on what matters while they're teaching. So that's one of the results that when I run the statistical test, it was really nice and surprising for me to know about that. So certified flight instructors, hopefully you'll get the automation you
You're
wanted. So
asking for.
yeah, so that can be useful in your daily practice. So
That's a really interesting point because I was wondering also about another thing. Maybe like the more complex the aircraft these guys are flying, the more awareness there is around a need for automation or
Right.
automated devices, right? Or systems, subsystems, components, and everything. And maybe those flying, and I don't want to belittle anybody flying turboprops or anything like that that need less automation. Maybe these guys might not see it the same way. So I wonder if you saw a difference in that. And also another one is, the difference between what a newer generation of pilots with maybe less experience than those who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, flying everything from like 707s to, A380s might, see things very differently. One might be a little bit more on the theoretical side of things, wanting more automation, and the other ones are like, yes, but, and some, in the middle saying, no, I'm fine the way it is. So I don't know if you saw any kind of differences as far as, the newbies and the veteran pilots out there.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting trend that we came across. As I said, that more experienced pilots preferred high level of automation. But I also would like to know what influenced private pilots or commercial pilots to select similar level of automation or fearless. As
Absolutely.
you rightfully said, it might be their exposure, and maybe they had limited exposure to automation and they haven't just discovered the benefit of using all those technological advancements yet. So maybe once they reach a certain level of experience, they will understand how useful it could be. But again, it's just an assumption, and it's so hard to find what really influenced their choice at that
Yeah.
particular day.
Yeah, and it's it would be also interesting to find out what helicopter pilots have to say about that because I remember one thing I used to train military helicopter pilot, and they said the greatest difference that we have as a helicopter pilot compared to a fixed wing pilot is a fixed wing pilot. At some point or another, he can go to the bathroom because the plane is flying. It's relying on its wings. We don't have that luxury. We have 100%
Right.
concentration at all time. And so I also, by the way, I'm a drummer, so I know how to have my two hands do different things, my 2 feet do two different things. And I understand that very much. You can't stop. And there's an automation process also in music that is very similar, where you rely on sequencers and things like that. So, that would be a fascinating study to understand. And especially knowing that, what? Collision avoidance, terrain collision avoidance is
Right.
still not on most helicopters, which boggles the mind to this day, right? So I wonder how these guys see all of that, especially now that we have the sad results of what happened a year ago in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
with that horrific crash, by the way. So all of these things, maybe
A lot
automated
of things are
systems.
coming into the interplane in
Yes,
results like that, and personal experience does influence. But based on the results that I had, we say that we can generalize study to the general public of pilots if the study has enough G power. So based on the number of participants I had, people who have more experience who
yeah.
have more flight experience, more hours logged, they prefer higher levels of automation. So that what we
That
can.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's true. And honestly, it's true. As much as I like driving an old car from the 50s or the 60s, I was in a Lucid Air not too long ago. I love it. It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's great. It's just like you like a lager and you like an IPA. It's still beer in the end, guys. Get over it. So that's the way I look at it anyway. So, but yeah, this is really fascinating. Your research is really fascinating. I can't wait to hear more about it. And so it's an open invitation. You can come back whenever you want, whenever you have. Hey, I just found this out. You're more than welcome to come back and tell us all about it. So we're almost 40 minutes into our podcast, and now this is the part where we get a little bit more personal. And this is a part where we ask you, what is your motivation? I mean, some people would just probably would like to get a job, an easy job, and sit back, get money, and then retire and all that stuff. But you're out there doing something that's a very new, it's new frontiers. It's really exciting. So what gets you out of bed in the morning? What is your motivation, Anna?
Wow, what a great question. I'm going to get a little bit philosophical.
Please do. We love philosophy here. We do.
There's a saying that there are people who live and they just don't observe the change. They don't see how life changes. There are people who wake up and they see, oh, there's so many changes, every day, so many. You watch the news, you follow the innovations. It's just
Yeah.
changing with a huge pace. But there are also people who are changing this world. So
Yeah.
what wakes me up in the morning is the idea that I can add to the great body of knowledge and change something in this world by things that I do. Whether now I work at the Flight Safety International, I qualify flight instructors, I oversee their qualifications, I make sure that every pilot who comes to our facility will receive a quality training and will be flying safe out there. And that is my small impact to the industry that I'm in. I hope to add more value to the great body of knowledge, studying new technologies and helping the advancements of advanced air mobility. So that what really makes me wake up in the morning and say to myself, what I can do today to kind of leave a footprint of my life here on Earth. So that would be my answer to your question.
That's a beautiful answer, and it's true. I think those of us who work in these disruptive technology spaces, such as advanced air mobility, electric vehicles, and so on and so forth, there's a certain futuristic aspect to it. I don't know about you, but I grew up with Star Trek, so for me, that was always I'm walking forward into the unknown kind of thing, and or I'll find something, an object. I'm like, oh my gosh, can you see what we can do with this in 5, 10, 15 years? And of course, most people are like, no. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And we get very excited about these things. So I understand that motivation. It's something that we all share. And it's also very palpable. I mean, yeah, we've been speaking for 40 minutes and it's absolutely amazing. My ears are fully open and I'm listening to you. I can see the great work that you're already doing and how much you've already added to this, and you've been on stage and all that. So I really look forward to how much more you have to say. One question I did want to ask for, those who are listening to us and watching us right now, thank you, by the way. What would be the message you'd like to give these people out there? What would you like them to walk away from what we've talked today?
Uh, I would say that, first of all, in all the operational environment you are in, try always find the most safe solution. Um, uh, uh, Always base your decisions on the training that you have received, because in different contingencies during emergency situations, sometimes our mind just shuts down, and it's important to remember those training curriculums that you've been studying, that you've practicing. You're fully capable to solve any dilemma that is in front of
Hmm.
your eyes on that particular day. I would just say blue skies, safe flying, and let's just enjoy what we do, because that's ultimately what brought us to this industry. So blue skies, thank you so much for having me today. And it was a
Anna, it's
pleasure
a
reconnect on that eVTOL air show. I got to meet so many incredible people, and you were
yes.
one of the most impactful persons I talked to.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you
you.
for what you're doing, and
Oh,
you're bringing so much awareness to this industry. And
thank
I
you.
like so much to listen to all of your podcasts, and it's always so insightful. So if one of our listener now hasn't followed you and press the subscribe button, please go ahead and do that.
No, thank you. You're the first one who's ever said that. That really means a lot to me. That's wonderful. Thank you, Anna. No, it's true. I saw you on stage and I was like, oh, she's a wealth of information. She's doing the research that we need to hear about. So I'm very happy to have you here. I know it's been a long time in the making, but I'm glad we finally got to do that. And again, it is an open invitation for you to come back whenever you have more information. Definitely want to see, maybe as a follow up, definitely want to see how much the FAA is getting from your research and how much of that is translating into pilot training. Because, yes, we do have Mosaic now, we do have a lot of traction in that direction, and the FAA has been moving a lot, to say the least, this past year, and continues to do so. Now we have a pretty comprehensive plan, at least in the USA, going forward with advanced air mobility. So all the pieces are really coming together. And, I can't help but look back at how naive we were in 2017, which,
Absolutely.
not to shame anything, but you got to start somewhere, right? It was the conceptual levels. We thought we were just going to fly from building top to building top, and all of a sudden reality dawns in. And it's like an onion. You peel one layer after another, and you think you get to the core. Oh, there's another layer. There's another layer. But I
Mhm.
think now it's getting pretty. It's getting pretty good. It's robust
Yes.
enough on our side, the infrastructure side, where I focus. it's getting pretty realistic. We know what we need, we know what we can do, and we know what we cannot do as of yet. So this is really
Mhm.
interesting what's happening out there. So it's always great to hear what you have to say. Anna, any last words before we say goodbye to everyone?
I'm just so excited to see what future holds for us. The AM ecosystem develops, and now all the parties are involved: manufacturers, regulatory stakeholders, mm, uh, researchers. We're all working on making things to happen soon. And as long as we're doing our job and being honest about what we see in front of us, we will always find a solution as long as we identify the problems. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, and we'll see what happens soon.
Yeah, absolutely right. And let's not forget about those educators out there, those big schools that do a heck of a good job bringing all of this together to train our next generation. Thank you so much for being with us. It was really a pleasure to have you here. And I look forward to the next time when you will be here with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Blue skies, and see you next time.
Absolutely. You know, there's another saying I love from this guy on, I forgot his name, on YouTube. And he always says, safe flights and soft landings. I
Oh,
love that.
wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great one. I'm so sorry I'm forgetting his name right away. He's excellent. You got to listen to this guy. He's Russian and he's just an awesome guy.
It's equally important.
Equally important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there you go. You just heard a about 40 plus minute talk between Anna and myself. And I hope you walk away with a lot more understanding about how much is happening to make the future of mobility a reality, not just, on the road or on water or in the air, but AAM really promises to connect all of these dots together. And I hope you walk away understanding how much thought and consideration, obviously, but research into safety, into making sure that our pilots or operators of these new futuristic aircraft, call them flying cars, air taxis, they are electric aircraft, what needs to happen to make that happening safely over our heads. I have to tell you, I've been wanting to have Anna on the podcast for such a long time, and she is a perfect fit for our segment, Women in Mobility. And it is absolutely, it worked out really well. She was perfect. She was spot on. We don't script anything on the ways we move. We want it to be as natural as possible. And Anna was absolutely perfect. And keep a close eye on her. This lady will do a lot of great things going into the future. She's part of that new generation that has the right attitude, the right personality, the right foundation, integrity, and safety in mind. So, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it because I certainly have enjoyed it a lot. Again, please please subscribe and share. Some people might be interested in what we're doing here. We appreciate your help in that aspect. Go and see us on Patreon. We have the Ways We Move Plus, and this is where we offer you guys 48 hours access to these interviews before they are published on Thursdays. But we also give you a little bit more if you're willing to go an extra step up, which, by the way, helps us a lot, where you get deep dives with a lot of the people that we interview here, actually. And at one point or another, we're going to open it up to Q&As and places where you can come in and ask these people specific questions. And that will be for our higher tiered supporters on Patreon. So please go to Patreon. It's very easy, Patreon, and then look for The Ways We Move. I'll put the link right here. And then hope you've enjoyed this, and also share your comments. I'd like to know what you guys think about this. Is it fooey? Not going to happen? Are you looking forward to advanced air mobility? Do you see the potential of AAM connecting all the dots between EVs or cars, between railroad, between conventional airspace, between the maritime world? Do you see that? And if not, then I've done a really terrible job and I need to do a much better job at it. But let us know what you think. And we look forward to seeing you next week with yet again another great interview. Thank you all. And thank you for making The Ways We Move such a success. My name is Nicolas Zart, and I am really excited to bring you The Ways We Move.